Joel Ogden. I am the CEO and co-founder of Construct Studio. At Construct Studio, we do virtual reality narratives. So we started out in 360-degree film with our film Imago. So we essentially put somebody inside of a wheelchair, and then we try to conceptualize some of their thoughts and dreams and hopes from that space. However, as we were showing people this, a lot of people, had expressed that they wanted to actually reach out and touch the world. They wanted some sort of agency within the story that we were creating. So that led us to our recent interactive work, The Price of Freedom. So it's an interactive spy drama revolving around MKUltra, which was a government mind control experiment all throughout the Cold War. Where the CIA had used psychedelics, they had used electroshock therapy, and other methods to see if they could actually control somebody and control their actions. So I'll show you a little preview of that right now. I guess we don't have any audio. Are we able to, there we go.
And kill him. Benjamin.
Short of actually building a time machine, we found that VR is one of the best ways to actually teleport somebody into a specific time period. And figuring the type of work that we were doing, that worked particularly well. And we started diving into what the mood was that we're actually trying to set within this time period. So you could see some of our earlier concept work up in that upper right-hand corner. We started out a little bit darker with it, and we found that people actually got very uncomfortable very quick. A lot of people that even had experience in VR, they were used to jump scares, they were used to, a lot going on in these horror experiences, and that's not what we really wanted. We wanted to go for a little bit more of a feeling of suspense. So our approach was to kind of build up some of that horror and to build up that suspense by giving you some details about these actual government programs and everything, but not hitting you over the head right at the beginning with it to really kind of drive you away from the experience. And actually identifying who the player is a very important part of telling a VR narrative. Particularly when you have agency in that scene, people want to know what role they're actually supposed to be playing within this. So we did that by giving you a couple of clues right from the very beginning. We have a wristband on your hand that says that you're Agent Zero. We have a birthmark on your other hand that's in the shape of a butterfly. Now this butterfly is a reoccurring theme that you see throughout. You'll see this butterfly on music boxes and every place else, kind of giving you some sort of feeling that you actually belong within this space. And it also has some sort of relevance to the conspiracies and whatnot. And we also use these clues at the very end to really bash you over the head with this idea of who you are and who you've been playing is this role throughout. Narration also plays a key role in that too, in defining who you are. We noticed that putting the narrator's voice inside of a fixed point inside of the room, people often thought that somebody was talking to them, and they wanted to go out and try to discover who it was that was actually trying to converse with them. So our approach was to put this voice directly in the back of your head. So even when you're trying to look around and see who's talking to you, you can never actually get a glimpse of them. And this also adds to some of that discomfort, of somebody almost watching over you and really, in essence, controlling you and your actions, which is what we're going for and which is what works along with this whole mind control theme that we're going for. And then this voice that's telling you to essentially do these different actions and to guide you through the story, through the necessary steps that we need you to go through. So at first it tells you to go in and to kill this guy who's a traitor. And then later on, it gives you a bit more of an ambiguous task of, this guy had a document that we need to uncover. So we don't actually tell you what that document is. So that encourages you to go out and try to read every document in the space, you know, to actually see if this is something that's important to the story. And then actually dealing with the space itself is, of course, a major challenge in VR as well. So we really wanted to get away from any sort of, you know, unnatural locomotion and, you know, things like teleportation or any sort of running mechanics. And our approach to do that was to keep all the rooms at the minimum play space size, so 1.5 by 2 meters, and then allowing the person to walk back and forth. So they would go walk up to a door, open it up, that would fade out the space. Then the door closed in front of them, the space now fades back, and now you're in the room on the other side. So that allows us to keep from breaking that immersion throughout. And also these smaller rooms had the added advantage of creating that little feeling of claustrophobia and discomfort, which further kind of ties into that mood of, you know, of this dark plot that we're trying to tell. So as they're moving through these spaces, you know, at the very beginning, we found it very difficult to have people look at the things that they needed to look at and, you know, actually sit there and absorb it in the way that we wanted them to. So the approach that we took was having each and every room tell a specific plot point that we needed them to understand. So the room right before you get in to kill this guy, Benjamin Miller, you find out that he's a traitor, that he's been stealing these government documents, and you actually see some of these documents that he's stealing, and you see some of the evidence of this. And then as you actually get into the space, you shoot the guy, then you start to find out this information that he was a journalist, that these documents were actually being collected to, you know, to go into this report about these government conspiracies that are going on. So effectively, we're creating the story arc by the things that you're absorbing in those spaces and then blocking it up into the rooms that you're passing through. And then to find some pacing and flow within those spaces, we, you know, relied on natural things within that world. So filing cabinets, for example, are excellent for creating that natural flow. So most people start at the top, you know, the top drawer, and then they work their way down. So we can make assumptions about what they're actually going to be looking at first, and we could use that to, once again, form that story arc that we want them to pass through. And text is a very important part of what we're trying to do. A lot of our story is based on real government documents. A lot of them have just recently been declassified in the past couple of years. And originally, we actually tried to take the documents, you know, right from these CIA archives and stuff like that, and drop them right into the game. But as a lot of you know, VR is not great for trying to read things. The resolution is kind of bad right now. Also, your eyes don't really react to things like they do in the natural world. So we started to work with that a little bit and find different approaches. So our first attempt was to boil down, you know, these government documents into a little bit of a smaller, more digestible, more to the point type of piece. But we realized that even then, that required way too much of the viewer. They still needed to read through this large chunk of text. So then we started breaking that down even more. We started highlighting important things. We started, you know, making things in bold, you know, on the, you know, on the things that we actually wanted them to look at. And if you look at that news article down at the bottom, that's where we essentially ended up. So with a lot of our documents, we have a very clear title or heading telling you what this document is about. We give some mixed media that allows you to, you know, not only be reading about it, but actually seeing what we're talking about. And then the text is kept to a very short, very simple little blurb that's then highlighted to reflect the most important parts of it. And as you could see, we also had to convert everything into Chinese because our whole game is localized for Chinese audiences as well. And then playtesting is the last thing that I really want to talk about. And that's absolutely key for making any sort of interactive story experience because you don't really know how people are going to be perceiving your work until you actually put somebody through and test it out. So you really want to test as early as possible and as often as possible with as diverse of a group as possible. And the way that we approached that was to have one very clear thing that we were trying to establish from that test. So our earliest question was, does this person know who they are by the end of it? And once we hit that point, which took quite a bit of work and a number of different iterations, then the rest of it was just filling in some of these smaller details and some of these smaller subplots concerning who that person is. And also be watching exactly what they're doing within this virtual space. So especially different people from different cultures, different heights, you know, they're always going to be interacting with things in a slightly different way. So watch them and see how they're trying to interact with things, because if they're trying to touch something that should be touched and it doesn't work like they want it to, then they're either going to assume that they're doing it wrong or that it's broken, and either way that's not good for you. So when in doubt, just leave that out and scope appropriately. And that's essentially my talk. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to talk to you afterwards, or you could contact me through the information. Thank you.